Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 178 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Matthew Bradley, the founder and CEO of Tag Management, a female-focused athlete and creator management agency. We spoke about the rise of women's sports, what female athletes bring to the table that men don't, why brands should work more with female athletes, why Matthew started Tag Management, his career journey, and much more. Matthew Bradley, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday. It's great to have you on the show. For those who might not know your background, you are the founder and CEO of Tag Management, a female-focused athlete and creator management agency. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that nice intro. So I'm the founder of Talent Athlete Group, also known as Tag Management. We are a female-focused athlete and creator agency. We've been running for nearly 2 years now. I've gone full-time over the last year. And we represent Olympians, England rugby players, badminton. So it's a multi-sport agency. But as it says in the name, we are a female-focused agency to help our athletes work on their personal brands, get more sponsorship into their kind of careers as well. And we're one of the first ones to do it. I think it's quite a good narrative. And as I'm sure you know, women's sport is really kind of going in an upwards trend. So I feel like the timing's right to have an agency like ourselves to really push the female message to that next level.
Yeah, definitely. Women's sports is definitely on the rise, and I know more of hockey where I'm more invested, but obviously you saw the potential in women's sports since you opened this management agency. What more specifically did you see, and maybe what do you feel like you can provide the women's athletes with more specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's actually in the influencer marketing / creator agency. I was in there for about 10 years. So quite a long time, maybe before what it is now in terms of like the global scale as a marketing channel. And I built up a great network of brands, that have always kind of wanted to test the waters a little bit with women's sport, but didn't really know how that would work and how they would perform for them as well. So a good friend of mine was an ex-England women's cricketer and was like, hey, I've got this brand. Do you know how I should approach this? What I should be saying to attract them and how I should basically orchestrate this deal? So I gave some advice. They managed to get a good partnership from that. And they're still with that partner now for nearly 2 years now. So for me, I kind of noticed that maybe a slight gap in knowledge on particularly female athletes on how to, engage with these brands to reach out, negotiate, to put their best foot forward. And it wasn't just that athlete. I spoke to a few more and I noticed the trend almost of, okay, like it was almost a light bulb moment to hopefully, how can I support you? How can I connect you to these brands that I have that are wanted to work with female athletes? So I almost saw myself as a middle person, the bridge sometimes as well. And it wasn't just sport-specific brands. Like you mentioned, ice hockey. There's probably like 5 or 6 brands that are really kind of focused within ice hockey, like kit manufacturers, etc. My aim for the athletes that I manage across like badminton, rugby as well is how do we get brands outside of the sport into this industry? You've seen Charlotte Tilbury really kind of have started sponsoring the F1 Academy. We've seen Clinique go into the PWR, which is the England Women's Rugby League here as well. The brands are really having a good wake-up call as actually we can navigate this and with these athletes to reach the audiences that they have as well. So that in, I guess, a short answer. Hope he's answered it to a certain degree. And I guess for me is like what the female athletes also bring as well is authenticity. They're really good storytellers. I'm sure you follow a few, in terms of they document their daily training, the ups and downs of being a professional athlete. And also as well, one of the main hurdles when brands come to me is, oh, they don't have 500,000 followers. They've only got 20 or 30,000, which is still a good number, by the way, on the side note. But they don't realize that those 20 or 30,000 followers are passionate fans of that sport and of this athlete. So if I was a brand, I would be really targeting those audiences to really push my brand in there, because at the end of the day, that's their customer. And brands are starting to realize that now. And I guess it's putting my knowledge within there to kind of help shift them towards that as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I've spoken on this podcast before, and with regards to women's sports, that the women's sports fans are more engaged, more willing to spend dollars, are more loyal, and maybe in the sporting industry at large. So that's a very good point to bring up there, that the 20,000 versus 200,000, maybe it's not that big of a difference as it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always find with female athletes, they're more relatable as well. If you take a Premiership footballer, probably not going to get near them as a fan. Whereas I think female athletes now, they stay behind the games, the science stuff, they walk around the pitch. They're a lot more active on socials, I feel, compared to the male counterparts. So I feel audiences have a lot more access to them and really get to know the person, which I think is really key for me as well, because I think you've got to see it to believe it as well. A lot of these younger athletes will be looking up to these players as role models as well. And if they have more engagement, they'll be like, oh, I really want to be this footballer, or I want to be a professional rugby player, which we're starting to see now in the grassroots level as the numbers are starting to go up. The level as well across the sports is really going up as well. So that's the way that I see it. You've got to see it to believe it. And for me, female athletes engage with their audiences to another level, in my opinion.
Yeah, so except for this, we have talked about some reasons already here, but what are some other reasons why brands really should be investing more into the women's athletes and in women's sports?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, yeah, as I mentioned, they're starting to kind of test it and everything. It's an easier barrier to entry, right? I think women, we all know their contracts, their playing contracts aren't as big as the male counterparts. I think everyone probably knows that. So I think for me, for them, it's really important to understand actually I can earn more sponsorship off the pitch as well as on it. So I think brands maybe who can't afford the £1 million sponsorship deal with a professional footballer actually can maybe put some less of their budget working with these female athletes. So it's less of a risk for these brands. But hopefully what the numbers are saying in terms of like conversion rates for female athletes as well, it's 2.8 times more likely ROI when working with a female athlete, because they've built up that authenticity with their audience. They've also, I think audiences now can kind of tell when an athlete is not really focused with the brand. They're just kind of posting it for the compensation. Whereas now female athletes are really kind of part of the brand, and audiences are really kind of glued on with that kind of aspect to it. So that's the main reason I think brands should be getting into it. An easier barrier to entry. And when they realize what these female athletes can do in terms of the content creating, I believe that they work 5 times as hard compared to the male counterparts, because they need to obviously earn more revenue for them as well. So I think it's a win-win in that aspect. And we're starting to see now brands that maybe get in early in an athlete's career, 10 years down the line when there could be a global superstar, they're going to still be with them. So that's why I would really encourage brands to tap into women's sport more.
Yeah, so you help them with their commercial partnerships and so forth. Are you also acting as a manager, agent, or is that something different?
Yeah, so people always ask me, agent versus manager, what's the difference? This might ruffle a few feathers. In my opinion, an agent waits for the phone to ring, whereas a manager is a bit more proactive on kind of sourcing these deals for them. So yes, I'm a qualified ECB agent, so I handle the cricket contracts in that aspect. But my main focus is actually managing the athlete on their personal brand, how to grow their social media across channels, whether that's Instagram, TikTok, almost giving blueprints on how to do that as well. Because I've been in that industry, I understand what brands look for. So I've worked with clients like Adidas, Holland and Barrett. So I understand what they want to see for an athlete. So I've gained this knowledge, given it to the athletes to really kind of grow their personal brands as well. But like I mentioned before, commercial growth as well is how do we get more revenue for these athletes? But it's not just here's an Instagram post and leave it. I really push the more ambassador roles, the long-term partnerships to build up that authenticity as well. So I'd say there's three key main areas. Is the contract side, the agent side, although I'm not the biggest fan of the word agent. The personal branding side, so that's the social media, how to grow it. And then finally, the more commercial side, the off-pitch sponsorships as well. Those are our three narratives that we really our three pillars that we're trying to really push at the moment for our athletes.
Interesting. What do you think that the managers and agents in general can do more to help their athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me is being more proactive because, I think people often wait for stuff to come in, just get inbounds and everything, waiting for the messages. Hey, we want to work with XYZ. Can you send me over their rates for this? Where for me is each athlete, I have a different blueprint for, a different strategy. They want to work with different brands, whether that's B Corp, sustainability, or if it's fashion and beauty. So for me, it's actually creating a narrative on how to approach these brands with a pitch, a presentation to be, hey, would you like to work with Jess? Here's all her social stats. Here's some of her content. Here's her ideas around what she would like to do with your brand. And as a brand manager, you're thinking, oh, wow, I've actually got some ideas now. I didn't think of that. And the fact that they're getting approached as well, I think they actually quite like. So I think proactiveness is the biggest one for me in terms of we need to speak to more brands with different ideas as well, because like I mentioned before, brands want to test it. And it's me as a manager to come up with these ideas as well, being the more creative aspect, I feel.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So you mentioned before, obviously the paycheck is not where it is on the men's side. Maybe it will be. But how do you feel? Is this an issue on your end? And how do you think that it will develop?
Yeah, absolutely. Would I say it's an issue? No, because I'm still running as a business. So I'm doing something right to a certain degree. I think for me, it's managing expectations and the volume of deals. So I think for a male counterpart could be one deal or one commission. That could be, I just need to get one or two of those a year. Then I'm good. Whereas for me, with each athlete, there's probably about 4 or 5 deals within that. And it's handling those relationships as well in terms of that. But there is sponsorship out there. Brands want this as well. And that's not just like fashion, beauty, it's corporate sponsorship as well. They want to work with female athletes to be there, be part of their company as well. If there's kind of certain values and similarities. I'll give an example. Claudia McDonald is an England women's rugby player. She works with a company called PE Solutions, which is a energy company, and they're really big on sustainability, like Claudia. So for me, all of those kind of stars aligned with having the same values as each other. And she goes into rugby clubs and schools to deliver talks about being better to the environment and sustainability and things like that. So there is sponsorship and brand partnership deals out there. It's just really honing in on the athlete's story, what they can bring to that brand as well.
And you mentioned that female athletes are good storytellers and usually good with social media and branding side. I would say on average, probably better than the men. So with these things, what are some other things that you think female athletes bring more to the table than men are able to do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think you touched on it there. Like they're good content creators in terms of that. An example is Ellie Boatman, a GB7s player, in Paris. I think one of her videos reached 60 million people, and she only had 25,000 followers at the time, but it was skyrocketing like that. And the video did not take long at all to create. So I always encourage athletes sometimes just create content on the fly rather than a real kind of polished aspect to that as well. But I think what else they can bring as well is, yeah, like I mentioned previously, the audience, the content creation, but also hard work as well. I feel when female athletes work with brands, they want to do a good job because their salary obviously isn't as big. So if they can actually work well with this brand, they work really hard in the content creation side to get repeat business as well. Is how do we turn that maybe 3-month campaign into a 3-year campaign as well? But I think the main one is authenticity. In general, I don't know the stats on this, sorry. I think females are really authentic and good storytellers. They know how to kind of communicate with their audience as well. My athletes document their lives on a daily basis, where the ups and downs. Sorry. So I think authenticity as well is a really key factor.
Yeah, definitely. So there's, I think, a Chinese proverb that says, like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. And I had a guest on, Caroline Fitzgerald, who twisted it into women's sports, which was basically the best time to invest in women's sports was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. You were the first female-only agency in the UK, so you have a little bit of a first-mover advantage. How do you see it now when you're up and running?
Yeah, I just think I do have that advantage from a business perspective. But for me, it's actually doing the right thing as well, because no one's really done it before. And if not you, who? That's what I always say. And if I'm in a position to actually make a difference to these athletes' lives and get them to the level that they're trying to achieve, off the pitch, I'm not going to teach people how to play badminton or rugby or anything, but it's bringing that business element to their lives, then I think I'm doing the right thing as well. Yeah, as mentioned, we're quite early doors in terms of our footprint within the market. However, we work with 20 athletes now, and they're all international level across netball, rugby, cricket. So I guess the first mover advantage and why athletes join us is we do have this female narrative, and every athlete that joins, if you ever get a chance to speak to them, I'm sure you will at some point, is we want to be part of this movement as well. I won't speak for them, but when I get the sense that I want to be part of this larger kind of movement. So I guess for me is our next phase is to branch out into a couple different sports, maybe a chat and ice hockey over a coffee at some point, just to see if there's any relevance there. But it's also hopefully going to bring in kind of maybe some US athletes as well. That's my kind of 2-year plan, is to maybe go over there. You've seen the rise of Eleanor Maher, Simone Biles, who are in their own right global superstars now. So for me, I would really like to see that blueprint over in the UK and hopefully start working with some of those athletes to aspire to that level as well. For me, it's not about kind of company size and how many athletes I have. It's what I'm actually doing with these athletes to get them to that next level. And that's what I'm really trying to focus in on at the moment. Yeah, the next phase will be really busy. Being a multi-sport agency, it has its pros and cons. When cricket season stops, the rugby season starts, and then there's hockey in the middle, and so on. So it is 24/7, but I'll be honest, I absolutely love it. Like, it's no day's the same. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it at the moment. And yeah, I think some athletes quite like working with maybe a more personalized service. Maybe instead of a massive corporation, they're really good at what they do as well. But if they're looking for a bit more personalized, I want to hear from someone every day. maybe not every day, but once a week, I speak to all my athletes or give a roundup of, hey, here's what I'm working on. Here's where we're at. Because I think communication is really key in terms of working with athletes. Trust as well goes a really long way. And I think I've built that with my athletes as well.
So I'm interested in your journey. So, now you're doing this with the agency, but how did you get here? What is your background? Where did you come from? And how did you get into this career path?
So I've always been a really big sports fan, just generally. My sport was actually badminton, which is quite a niche sport in Europe, but outside of Europe, across like Asia and other markets, it's probably one of the most biggest sports in terms of kind of participation, and they're almost superstars over there. Well, they are superstars, if I'm honest. So I played at kind of county level, kind of worked my way up. I studied at Bath University and was in their high performance elite squad. So I trained with players from Great Britain, England players. I then moved to Loughborough, which is probably the biggest sports university in the UK, again in their high performance setup. Toured Europe through the badminton circuit. I think I got up to maybe 12th or 13th. So I did okay, but was never at that like top level, if that makes sense. So I basically then moved to London, worked a normal kind of corporate job. But I really had a passion for being in the creative industry of some sort. So I got offered a role in an influencer marketing agency. I was there for two and a bit years. So I worked with some really awesome brands, worked on some really exciting campaigns as well. I then moved to another influencer marketing agency and started to head that up. And like I mentioned before, worked with Adidas, Holland and Barrett, a few other ones as well, which unfortunately I can't say, which is a shame. But there was always this feeling in me I really want to get back into sport somehow. And I'd built up a great network of athletes through Bath and Loughborough who went to the Olympics, who are gold medalists, the Commonwealths, who I'm still friends with to this day. And I kind of had a bit of assurance from a couple of them, like, you should really do this. I think you can bring some expertise and almost a bit of breath of fresh air almost to the industry. So that's kind of my background. It's not the most exciting journey, if I'm honest, but I think we're just getting started now. And I'm glad I made the jump to kind of go full time with this and leave the influencer industry. But I think for me, it's what I've learned through that and put that into my own startup now has been really beneficial.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting and interesting. And that's why I'm asking these questions, because, 175 something episodes now, no one's story is the same. And that's what I want, because there's a lot of young listeners that maybe think that you have to go to uni, you have to study sports management, you have to take an internship in order to get a job. But I mean, there's so many paths, right? So that's why I like to ask that question, to find out that there's a lot of roads you can take to end up in the sports industry.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, I struggled academically at university. I was not the most proficient in exams and coursework and things like that. I'm not the brightest person academically. I would say I'm kind of left-brained a little bit, the more creative side. So that's why sport was almost an outlet for me, because it was my kind of safety blanket like that. Yes, university is great if you want to work in the sports industry. But for me, because hopefully we're looking to hire at the start of next year. This isn't promo, by the way, just letting you know. But for me, if I looked at his CV, they wouldn't technically have to go to university if they had a strong passion and knew the women's sport industry really well. I wouldn't really care if they'd been to university or not. And I think every journey is different within the sports industry. That's athletes, that's people that have got into it. Some people should really strive to be in it. Some people just fall in it, a bit like me. So I think, yeah, like you said, all the other guests you've had on the podcast really have a different story, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. you decided to go and start your own and go 100% with that. Going from working for someone else to working for yourself, how did you take that decision?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few factors. I can't disclose a couple of them in terms of for a couple of different reasons. Nothing too crazy. I think I'd been at my previous role for 4.5 years, and for me, I kind of hit the ceiling for my career in that industry in terms of I don't know where to kind of go from here. And for me, I've always liked having my own autonomy. So I always say I gave up the 9 to 5, but now I have a 24/7. And people think, oh, you must live an amazing life running your own company. And I'm like, well, you probably only see 5% of things, the good stuff that you might see on social media, on LinkedIn. But you don't see the 95% of actually running a business, managing 20 athletes, contractors, having meetings with my advisory board who are absolutely amazing for me as well. Finding new deals, finding new athletes. So there's a lot of spinning plates. But for me, I think the final, I wouldn't say straw, is I would just kind of hit a point where like I wasn't learning anything now. I was just going along, ticking the boxes. And for me, personally, I want to kind of achieve more with my own personal development, my own learning. And so for me, I kind of just hit a wall in terms of that. And I wasn't really bringing anything else, I guess, not for the company, but I was just managing clients and I didn't find it the most inspiring work. Whereas I've had this itch to be like, I can actually make a difference somewhere else. That was the main reason for kind of leaving.
Yeah, I understand that. So regarding to working for someone else or working for yourself, has there been any bumps on the road in your career? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Oh, yeah. I think at least a couple of times a week, there's some heavy bumps that I have to kind of get over. There's many issues that I kind of face challenges on every day. For example, if I am ill for one day, I have no one else to kind of pick up the work in my absence. So I think for me, it's just having a clear kind of structure in terms of like, if I am ill, what do I do now? Kind of thing. It's just like, right, I move to voice notes. If I'm literally in bed, that's kind of one thing. I guess the hurdle for me that I experienced at the start is what was my, I guess, story and narrative to attract new athletes. I was very fortunate enough. I knew one athlete that was with me for the first 3 months before we had anything else. Like, so for that 3 months was probably the most stressful amount of my time because I really wanted to deliver for this athlete. And I did. We managed to get 2 or 3 brand sponsorship deals. One was a nutrition brand that they're still with today as well. So from then I've actually got almost a case study, a testimonial. And then all of a sudden it turned into 3 athletes, 4 athletes, and then kind of spiraled from there. In terms of hurdles as well, is every brand that you speak to is not always going to lead to something. So rejection is a really big part of this game in terms of like the commercial side and the brand deals as well. Because there's only so much that I can do and put the athlete in the best light of this is why you should work with them. But if the team of 5 at this brand say, actually, no, they're not quite ready to work with them, then obviously I have to deliver that news to the athlete, etc. So I think rejection is a big part of it. And I think getting over that and trying to really kind of just keep going, that's the message that I always really push to anyone that wants to work in this industry is like, you have to really work hard if you want to get to a certain level within that. And just to keep knocking on the door as well, just because they said no this time to work with an athlete, it doesn't mean in 6 months' time then it's not relevant as well. So I think that this has happened as well, by the way. One brand said no. I emailed them, I think 7 or 8 times throughout 2 years. Don't worry, it's not too bad. And they finally said yes. And then again, they kind of realize, oh, I wish we'd done this earlier. So I was like, I was trying to say that. But again, for me, handling those rejections, particularly as a business owner, but also as well, telling the athlete as well. But I think athletes are very kind of thick skinned. They're quite stubborn. So it doesn't affect them too much as well. So yeah, those are a couple of hurdles I feel that I've come across.
Yeah, and you touched upon it a little bit there. My next question, which is your best advice for people in the industry. So working hard and continue to knocking on doors, not giving up. Any other advice on top of your head for someone who wants to work in the sports industry?
Absolutely. I think LinkedIn has been a massive one for me. Because within sport, there are so many different roles. There's an agent, a manager. Do you want to work in sponsorship, rights holders, strength and conditioning, nutrition? Like it's so vast. But at the same time, my kind of thinking that there's always someone that knows someone to a certain degree. And a prime example, I've got an advisory board of 5 people. I only knew one of them on a personal level. The other 4, I messaged on LinkedIn to have coffee with. I'll be like, I have this idea. Can I have 15 minutes of your time? 9 times out of 10, people do say yes. And I don't understand why my inbox isn't. There are graduates wanting, hey, do you have 10 minutes? And of course, if I have time on a Friday, like a day like today, of course I can give 10 minutes and advise. But I would want to see like 20 or 30 messages a week. Like, hey, Matt, like, what do you think I should do here? What do you think I should do there? And I might not be able to have coffee, but I could say, speak to this person, or have you thought about this as well? Because I think people in those positions higher up who have maybe achieved their goals in their career, they do want to help maybe the next generation wanting to come through. And I also think we have a role as well to help those people navigate the sport industry as well. So for me, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's whether that's a good thing or not. But it's paid off for me because likewise as well, I've asked athletes who weren't with an agent or manager where I was a bit kind of oohing and ahhing over the decision. Then I thought, actually, let's go for a coffee to figure out if this could be a right partnership. Likewise for the advisory board, likewise working with brands on LinkedIn as well. So I'd really kind of push for that, but give a reasoning behind you want to speak to them. Don't just say, can we have coffee? I would be, hey, I want to find out more about being an agent and the intricacies within that. Do you have any advice on whether I should be football, rugby, the exams that go with that as well? So I think it's been quite specific. A bit like yourself, there's only so much time that you can give. So that's what I would really recommend to someone wanting to get into the sports industry.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I think there was a study made that you are less than 4 people away basically from anyone in the world.
Oh, wow.
So that means that you know someone who knows someone who knows someone who is that person. So basically you have access to everyone, and especially now with social media and everything. And that also leads me into my next question, because I usually ask people, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
There is a lady called Lottie White who is on my board, and I'll be honest, I've never met anyone like her. Her tenacity and drive for her business, which is called MyoMaster, shout out. They do recovery for athletes, but also the generic person as well, like ice baths, therapy guns, things like that. She is amazing. She's been on podcasts, a famous TV show here as well, where one of her clips went viral, pushing back in a well thought way when she was protecting her business as well. I was actually really fortunate enough to go into her office last week to just sit there and work and observe. And what she has done with that business, with a team of 4 or 5, is just incredible. And it's always, I guess, fascinating to see. You see it from the outside, how well a business is doing. But when you're actually like in there for a day, watching how they go about their business, they've taken, I guess, high performance sport, but into the corporate world. That's what I really kind of would admire about Lottie. So yeah, I think she would be a great guest. She's very punchy. She's very direct, but I think I've never met anyone with so much drive in the sporting corporate career.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
So approaching the end here, is there something I haven't asked you yet that you want to mention before we sign off?
No, I think that's all good from my side. I know we touched on quite a few different kind of topics there. I hope it's been somewhat beneficial to your listeners. And I guess for me as well, thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I hope people have learned a little bit more about kind of women's sports and wanted to work with them. And yeah, I guess my last message, if there's any brands out there that want to tap into women's sports, give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? That's what I always say.
That's great. So how can the listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.talentathletegroup.co.uk. On socials as well, it's Tag Management. And I've also started documenting my journey on Instagram as well, which is Mappy Tag Management, giving some insights behind the scenes on what I do on a daily life. Some people seem to enjoy it. So yeah, starting to be a bit of a content creator myself, which is good fun.
Great stuff, Matt. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.